happen. I am standing there in the middle of the biggest theater stage that I have ever stood on. Now, not Kelly the speaker, and not Kelly the teacher, but Kelly the actress. And the entire room is filled, but completely quiet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they've come to see me. It was really surreal. It was my show. This is it. It was the moment I had secretly been dreaming about my whole life. And I was at High Point Theater here in High Point, North Carolina. And I still can't quite believe how I ended up there. And yet, in some ways, it made so much sense. I mean, I still remember being a little girl singing in the backyard with the stick microphone and doing flip-flops over the top bar of the swing set. In those days, the swing set was never cemented into the ground. And it felt like the little girl and the woman were now crossing shoulders in time. Like I was leaping from the living room at a family reunion saying, hey, I wrote another story to this stage. And the woman I am met the little girl that I was, sort of high-fiving each other as we passed through time, whispering, way to go. It was finally here, the premiere, the opening night of Who Hijacked My Fairy Tale. The theater is completely dark, except for this one blinding spotlight that's hitting through the dusty fog from that booth way up there in the back. It's that surreal moment in a show. Maybe if we have any artists on here, you know this feeling, or athletes or musicians. It's that moment where everything you've been working for and dreaming of comes together in this one moment. This one moment of magic. Not the opening, not the closing, but this one. The place where everything suspends and you're just in the zone. That feeling when you start to feel yourself leave your body and kind of watch everything from a different place, a higher place, where you're no longer worried about timing or the notes or the way you rehearsed it or whether you should be standing here or there, and all your insecurities and worries just fade away in this one moment where you're just, I don't know, lost in the music and you're flying. And I remember feeling something I wasn't sure I had ever to this extent felt before, the feeling that I was exactly in this moment doing what I was born to do. The feeling that I could stay in this moment for the rest of my life, suspended in time. Have you ever had a moment like that? Or maybe you're about to, who knows? Anyway, it had taken me 51 years to get to that moment right there. And it was a lot harder to get off the ground. But there I was in all my middle-aged glory, defying gravity. It was the end of January 2020. And I had no idea in that moment what was waiting for me when I would hit the ground again. That in less than 2 months, my show would be grounded and the theaters would go dark. That in just 2 months, everything would come to a crashing halt, and the whole world would go behind a mask, closed until further notice. So that's where I was before COVID. And I'm sure you have a before COVID moment too. We all do. And I do find it incredibly ironic that my show was about a fairy tale being hijacked. And there you go. The show itself got hijacked. And so here I stand, sit, just like you, in the middle of a storm they named Corona. So hey everybody at GMA, Kelly Swanson here. I would say good to see you again, but I can't see anybody but myself. And let me tell you, the urge to fix my hair is extremely overwhelming. So I've met some of you before when I came to speak at one of your GMA monthly meetings. I don't know, I think it was a few years ago. Wow, speaking on a stage, I've almost forgotten what that feels like. Yeah, nobody's clapped for me in over 2 months. Apparently my husband and son are not as excited to see me coming and going as an audience was. Nobody's laughed out loud at my jokes in weeks. Well, except for me, and even I'm faking it sometimes. I'm not even sure if I'm funny anymore. My dog doesn't seem to think my webinars are that funny. And let me go ahead and tell you listening that he might appear. I mean, if any of you are working from home, you know the feeling. We try to put the dog out. We try to get everybody quiet and Murphy's Law. But my dog, Max, is his name if you see him. He's a white German Shepherd from the shelter. He has a habit of showing up whenever I do a webinar. And I tried putting him outside, but then he throws himself up against the door of my office and wails until I let him in. Nobody puts baby in a corner. Anyway, and the funny thing is, as soon as I end a webinar, he leaves the room and goes to take a nap. He's been napping a lot lately. I think he's getting sick of having me here all the time. You know you've been quarantined too long when the dog's ready for you to go. Anyway, so for those I haven't met, hello, Kelly Swanson, and below this screen, I'm a size 6. Yeah, I wish. I ate all my Armageddon snacks by the second day of sheltering in place. You know, I've noticed that there are 2 types of people who go through this quarantine. The ones who exercise their way through it and the ones who eat their way through it. Let's just say I did not choose exercise or cleaning or laundry. I've been wearing this outfit, y'all, for 3 weeks. So yeah, a little bit about me before we get started. I'm a motivational speaker and a comedian, which means I tell you can do anything, and then I'll tell you I'm just kidding. I also speak on storytelling in business to help you give your words more power. But Holly had said for today, she wanted me to just bring some humor and motivation and an uplifting message to the group. I was like, why? Are they going through a tough time? Yes, I am being sarcastic. I'm in the same awful sitcom you are, just a different channel. So yeah, humor is a tough sell on a computer. A comedian really needs an audience. So I'm not even going to try to be funny or give you canned jokes. And there certainly isn't a whole lot to laugh about these days. But I do believe that finding the funny in a situation, finding a way to laugh, even when it's raining, well, I don't know, is good for the soul. So I will point out some of the funny I'm finding in my new situation, and we'll look for some, well, silver linings. How about that? Today's topic is how we can encourage others around us. The next webinar I'm going to do in a couple of weeks will focus on how to lift our own spirits. Now, I know everybody listening is all over the place right now. You and I, we're all going through this time in different ways. We're facing different problems and scenarios, different layers of loss and responsibilities, making tough decisions, that is for sure. Some people in industries are completely grounded. Some people never stopped working a day, and some are working harder than they ever did. We've got kids at home we thought weren't going to be, dealing with a pandemic followed by social outrage and pent-up frustration. And I don't know about you, but it sort of feels like things are falling apart sometimes, doesn't it? If I start to see locusts, I'm out of here. I'm just saying. And it's hard enough to be motivated when times are pretty normal. But this, well, I'm afraid a simple, you can do it, or have an attitude of gratitude is not going to cut it. I'm sure you're sick of hearing we're in this together. And no, I'm pretty sure if I lose my house, you're not going to show up with the payment. I mean, I wouldn't stop you if you did. We're all having to face this storm in the best way we know how, with no roadmap and no idea what's ahead. How's that for cheering you up? My industry, both speaking and the theater show, were decimated. No sign of returning to normal anytime soon. I have somewhat of a medical issue that makes me more susceptible to a virus, and so I'm even afraid of hearing somebody sneeze. And I haven't been able to see my parents for months, except through a computer screen. And then I only get to see half their face because they still can't figure out where the camera is on their computer. It's weird, though. I think my parents actually prefer this method of communication. I mean, they get to have us pop in at the time they request. We don't mess up their house, drink their alcohol, and they don't have to clean or yawn repeatedly to get us to leave. I think my parents actually prefer the Zoom edition of our family. Nothing like being able to put your kid on mute. Although I'm sick of seeing my mother wipe her computer screen whenever someone in the Zoom room sneezes. And when my face froze last week, she freaked out and called 911 because she thought I was having a stroke. We actually had our family reunion on Zoom. I know, how weird is that? Maybe you have too. Up until now, we couldn't get people to commit to a family gathering to save our lives. But after 3 weeks of quarantine, we will talk to anybody. It took my son 3 hours to walk Nana and Pawpaw through the whole Zoom deal, and they're so scared to touch it that the thing just stays on now all the time. If it's true that the government is watching us on our computers, then there's a bunch of secret spy agents up at the Pentagon really wishing Nanny wouldn't walk around naked in the middle of the night. I'm just saying. Anyway, it became quickly obvious to us that we weren't sure how to handle the whole virtual reunion thing. I mean, how in the world do you have a family reunion with no food? I mean, what's left? And we think Pearl had a fabric backdrop made. No way was that a real bookshelf behind her. We all know she doesn't read anything that doesn't have a Kardashian in it. And then Aunt Bert shared that since she's been in quarantine, she didn't see the point in shaving her legs anymore. And her husband said, anymore? And we all got a good laugh over that till she showed us her legs on the camera. The only one who didn't talk was my cousin in the bottom right corner, who never said a word. We later found out he wasn't my cousin. He was somebody else's who got on the wrong call and said that our family was more fun than his, so we decided to stay. I don't know about your doctor appointments, but I think my dentist wants to do our next visit by Zoom. Yeah, so I better start watching YouTube videos on how to fill a cavity. So yeah, the virus tanked my business. I mean, I just watched job after job after job disappear for months. Some people are predicting that meetings won't happen until next year, the big ones. So I felt like somebody had taken my dream that I've been working 20 years to build and shook it all up like a puzzle with 10,000 pieces, all sky, and then threw it out onto a sky blue shag carpet and said, now go pick up all the pieces and put it back together. And I'm not sure I can. I mean, I'm pretty sure some pieces went up under the armoire along with about 100 other random items I'll never see till we move. So yeah, I'm not going to paint this situation with a pretty brush. I, just like everybody else, went through the traditional stages. You know, anger, denial, Haagen-Dazs, Jim Beam. By the way, you know you've been in quarantine too long when the guy who works at the liquor store comments on your nail polish. I'm just saying. Or when you watch a show and you start, I don't know if this is happening to y'all, but I see a show now on Netflix and I start freaking out when two strangers start kissing. I'm like, no, social distance, social distance. Anyway, while some of us are still hanging on to our own calm by a thread, we're still responsible for the well-being of others. It's really hard to encourage others when you're having a meltdown yourself. And well, like I said, join me on the next webinar and we'll talk about how to get yourself out of the pit. But today, our focus is outward. So how can we be a light to the people around us when there is such darkness? When pat answers aren't going to cut it? When people are short-tempered, anxiety-ridden, and dealing with much more than many of them have ever had to deal with before? What do you say when your words matter more than they ever did? When the problems are so much bigger than you are? While you and I hold different jobs, I think we're all leaders, really. I mean, even if it's not in our job description, because we all have the power to affect others, to impact those who cross our path. Our words have the power to lift up or tear down. I remember my grandfather used to have a saying on his wall. It said, look at the ships. They're so large and driven by strong winds, but they're guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And that's always stuck with me because I do believe that it is true that one person can be a light. I would go so far as to say we don't just have the opportunity, we have the obligation, or rather the privilege, to be part of the conversation. What we say matters. How we say it matters. And now more than ever, We got to think before we speak. That's never been my strength, by the way. I like to think and process out loud. I like to just spew out a bunch of ideas and opinions and then look to see if any of them sound good. I like to talk. I talk so much, sometimes I even have to interrupt myself to get a word in. And I tend to be more reactive with my own husband and son. But if there's anything that this current climate has taught me, it's to think before I speak. So when it comes to the people you want to encourage and inspire, lead and motivate, I don't know, we need to be really good at shutting up, taking a beat to think about what you're going to say. My grandfather would always say, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and even slower to anger. As a motivational speaker, y'all, I've always struggled to find the truth I'm supposed to share and the moment it's supposed to be shared and the answers I'm supposed to bring. I don't know if any of y'all are in a position where people are looking at you for answers. I mean, even in our house, I've got one son, he's precious. Y'all, he is sweet to the soul, but he's useless. I'm sorry, but he is. Now, I'm told he'll grow out of it, teen years and all that. We've even given him a nickname. Don't tell him, but we call him bare minimum. I feel like we spend 80% of our day telling BM what he needs to do. Clean your room. Did you take the trash out to the street? Be sure to charge your phone. Did you switch your clothes from the washer to the dryer? Did you take a shower with water and soap? It's exhausting. We have to tell him 1,000,000 times. And the more we say the same things, the louder we get and the more he forgets. We went out of town last week and left him alone overnight for the first time. I'm pretty sure he didn't bathe or brush his teeth once, and all the meals I cooked in advance were still there untouched when we got back, so I'm pretty sure he existed on chips and soda. Maybe you can relate. Lord help us all if they don't go back to school this fall. We were into homeschool for just one day, and I was already yelling at him to carry the one, so much that we both cried, and I had to apologize and buy him a cookie cake to make up for it. Homeschool did have a silver lining, though. We could make up our own courses. Yeah, he took Dishwashing 101 and AP Grout Cleaning. This summer, he's going to laundry camp. But we did have one incident when his teacher got caught drinking on the job. Now he wants to transfer to another homeschool. Anyway, I'm trying to make a point about how my son doesn't retain one single thing we tell him to do. Yet the other day, he mentioned something he overheard me say about the neighbor a month ago from 3 rooms away, and he was already in bed. I am amazed at how little my son remembers what I tell him to do, yet how much he remembers what I didn't even say to him. I don't know, it's a reminder to me anyway that our audience isn't listening half as much to what we're telling them to do as they are when we don't realize they're listening. It really made me stop and think, are my actions and overheard conversations in alignment with the words and that I profess? I'm not sure I want to answer that question out loud. Anyway, like I said, I've struggled as a speaker in finding the right answers to questions that are so much bigger than I am. And then I had a reality check. I remembered this one event I did years ago. It was a women's event. It happened to be at a church, and I was telling a story that about this woman strumming her guitar in the dark and watching her tiny baby sleep. And the woman is trying to remember the words of a song that her mother used to sing. And the song was an old hymn. Some of you may know it. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever thy lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And so when I was planning the story out in advance, I knew I don't sing very well, and this was even it was even hard for me to fake sing it. So I said to myself, well, when I get to that part of the story, I'm just going to speak it instead. And they're like, 400 women there. And I get to that point in the story where the woman finally remembers the song and the words they rolled over her soul, the words her mama used to sing, and like a warm, soft coat, they held her close while she sang to her new king. And I get no more than the first several words out, when peace like a river. And immediately the women joined in with me and began to sing. It was surreal. It was divine. And, a cappella, it was just a beautiful moment where everybody just sang together. And why am I telling you this? Because when the event was over and I'd sold books and signed them and done all that good stuff and everybody left, and that part alone can take an hour, just saying goodbye and hugging and hearing everybody's stories. But there's one woman who was hanging back, and she came up to me when it was all over, and she said, I just wanted you to know, she said, I didn't want to come tonight. And she said, I'm going through a really tough time. She said, my husband passed away and I've really been, it's hard. And she said, and I've been praying for a sign, some kind of a sign. And she said, and I got it tonight. And I was getting all puffed up thinking, oh, me, And she said, it was when those women sang. And she said, that was my husband's favorite hymn. And those were the last words he sang to me before he died. And I got back in my car that night, and it really hit me. The one moment I didn't plan was the one moment that made a difference to her. And I realized I'm not the one who will bring answers. I'm the one who will bring comfort. That's my job. That's my role. That's my privilege. My grandmother used to say, sometimes with hurting people, we think we need the right answers. And then when we can't find them, all we know to do is just comfort. And we often find that was the answer all along. As leaders in work and at home, I realize how quick I am to try to provide an answer to someone who just needed a hug. How quick I am to try to talk my son out of his problem without first honoring the moment he needs to be sad. I remember, I've spent 20 years trying to figure out how you motivate people and encourage them and inspire them and change their way of thinking. And it's not easy. And I remember speaking at Camp Lejeune, and I stayed at the Brigadier General's house. Very cool. And we were sitting up on the sofa late at night talking, and he was asking me about my job. And I asked him, I said, my husband and I have this ongoing discussion about whether people can be motivated. My husband thinks people can't. Get the wrong people, get them off the bus. And it's real black and white. And I happen to see everything in shades of gray. I think you can motivate people and inspire them. And I think the military is our greatest example of that, because people definitely, I've seen people go in one way and come out a completely different way, and willing to die for a cause. And you had to have motivated them, in the middle. And he said, I said, well, so sir, what's your answer? Can they be motivated or not? Who's right? And he said, well, you're both right, which I didn't tell my husband. But he said, you're both right. He said, of course, if you've got the wrong ones on the bus, you need to get them off. And you can't do it in a moment. It happens over time, and you have to keep working at it. He said, but I'm going to give you one quick answer to your question. And he said, what we do is we give them something bigger to believe in than themselves. And I realized that that's what I've been doing as a motivational speaker, is helping people see the bigger picture in what they do, in why it matters to them, to the world, to the companies they work for. And I know it sounds simple, but I think some of our greatest truths are: give them something bigger to believe in and go as high up as you need to go to find it. So when the world shut down, I watched all my bookings disappear for months, and my income in the theater show was grounded. And people are still telling us that the theaters are not going to open anytime soon. And I've remember thinking, am I done? As many people are thinking that right now. Is it over? Am I done? What do I do now? And I spent a lot of time focusing on what isn't. And then I shifted and I started looking at what is. And I was forced to really remember why I do the work that I do, the value in my message, and how people still need what I have more than ever before. But I was going to have to figure out how to bring it to them, just as companies and businesses and nonprofits and people all over the country are doing, remembering their value and having the courage to believe in it so hard that you're willing to change everything you know about what you've been doing. And when you believe in what you do and that you still matter and that there is still a need that exists out there, you have more courage to jump. I'm jumping. I'm doing my own first ever virtual live show on June 20th. Check it out. It's called Girls Night with Kelly. But the point is, I'm scared to death. I haven't done anything like that before. I'm going to a studio, but my dream's bigger than my fear. And the silver lining in all of this, even though I would not have chosen it to be this way, is that it has forced me to look at my gifts and my talents in a whole new way. It has forced me to be creative and innovative. And I truly feel that when I come out of this, when we come out of this, I'll be better for it. I'll be stronger. And I think as leaders and influencers, we need to help our people frame the situation like that, to see the bigger thing they're working for, the need that still exists, to show their part in the bigger picture, to show their value. I used to always say when I would talk about customer service or employee engagement that it's not about making people happy. It's about making them feel valued. And that need exists now more than ever before to get them through this tough time. We need to show them, not tell them, show them. And there's a big difference. Show them their value. And that's hard when the whole environment has changed or the whole playground has changed. Same game, different playground. I believe there are 5 things. Is it 5? I think it's 5. I believe there are 5 things that everybody wants and needs. And even though times are really tough now and the stakes are much higher, I believe that still hasn't changed. I believe people want to be courted, your customers. I know that's an old-fashioned term, but we all know what it's like when we put our best face on and when in the beginning stages of courting, when you're excited to see somebody. Can you think of how you can court your customers during this tough time? People want to be acknowledged. We may be 6 feet apart, but I still want to know that you see me. I need you to look up from the counter, even wearing a mask, and show me that you see me standing here. How can you acknowledge your people in a way that they really believe it? People want to be heard. I don't think we always need to be right, but I do want the chance to speak and know that I am heard and that you understand the meaning in my words. How can you specifically show the people you're trying to lead right now that you hear them and that their words have meaning? People want to be respected. Oh, it's a great honor to be respected. I mean, how can we show that person, that group, our team, that they're respected? What makes you feel respected or disrespected? And people, lastly, want to be remembered. I still remember the day I walked up to the counter at the airport after 10 years of flying when they finally remembered my name. I mean, maybe they remembered me sooner and just didn't act like it, but the difference is vast. How can you show people that even during this tough time, even if you don't have a chance to serve them, that you still remember them? And there's one word I just use consistently, and that's show me. Don't tell me, show me. And there's a big difference. So that's my 2 cents. It's how I motivate and inspire audiences. And I'm pretty sure these principles will still work across the board. Your homework is to look at the message you've received today and figure out how you can put it into action, how you go from telling people what to do or what they should do to showing them. That's where the gold is. And if you can't figure it out, I think that wanting it or being aware of it or having that intention in everything you say and do as a leader might just be enough. Sometimes it's what's in the heart that matters more than how the words come out. So I'm going to step into a studio in June, take a deep breath, and trust that my words matter to the ones that need to hear them. That I can still inspire and encourage and lead and light someone's candle, even if they take away my stage. And so can you. Your words matter more than ever. You have the divine privilege of impacting the lives around you, and we need your light more than ever before. It's the only way we're going to get through the dark. I'm Kelly Swanson. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a little more humor, a little more hope, and a message about how we can fill our own tank when we're running on empty. Until then, be safe, be well, and be the light you were made to be. Thank you.